Pikachu, you don't have to be afraid. I'll teach you my secret punch, and nobody will be able to beat you. You gotta learn the basics first. Keep your left up and jab with your right. Great, now try a left hook. Okay, uppercut. Awesome. You know, let's take a break and listen to the podcast, okay?
Hey, I'm Veronica Taylor.
And I'm Rena Taylor.
And this is
The Trainer's Guide. Today's episode,
The Punchy Pokémon!
Hey, how's everybody doing? We're at episode 28.
How's it,
How's
listeners? Coming to you live from South Africa. Very exciting.
We are in Cape Town and having the best time.
We took a break last week from our podcast because we were traveling, we were on the road, and we also hit our middle of the podcast. So we took our little
Seasonal
spring break.
Yes.
But we went to Zurich. We did we went to Zurich, but on our way to South Africa, we had an 11-hour layover in Zurich. And we had an amazing time. We actually recorded the little spring break thing that you heard from the Zurich airport.
That's right.
But we had a great time. What did we do? We had,
oh my gosh.
chocolate.
We had a lot of
cheese.
coffee.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
It was
had like 4
weirdly
cups.
cold.
It was.
And we scurried around for about 8 hours, I would say.
We saw some cool churches, some amazing art, actually. We went into this one church where they have these stained glass windows designed by Marc Chagall.
It was really cool.
Really cool.
It was a crazy adventure, actually.
Yeah, it was. And we almost had fondue, but we decided against it because we didn't want to sit on the plane to South Africa for about 10 hours.
10 hours with cheese in your stomach. Although it sounds pretty good right now.
Yeah. And I mean, like Ash and his friends, and actually Team Rocket too, we were kind of just going meal to meal. So we didn't eat a lot in every meal, but we were kind of basing our whole day around what we were going to eat.
And we learned about chocolate.
Yeah.
We went to Max Chocolatiers, and he said that their chocolate is made from raw sugar rather than processed white.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as sweet, but it was delicious.
Yeah. It was.
I should say,
It was really
and
good.
it was delicious.
Yes, exactly.
You don't need chocolate to be so sweet to really enjoy it.
Yeah. You know what? I was just thinking, because I was thinking Brock would love that tidbit, but Brock would be a great, like, travel writer. If he was doing his own thing. I know Tracy comes in later, but he could team up with Tracy and Tracy could take photos
And sketch.
Brock could kind of write about the food and the breeding tricks and all that kind of stuff because he's really on the road trying to learn things, whereas Ash and Misty are kind of wanting to be trainers. So they're learning about different types of things. But Brock would be a great travel writer.
It's like when you do your scrapbook or your journal, your illustrated journal, the two of them could work together.
Yeah.
Like we should be doing.
I know.
Okay.
I have so much I have to do.
Let's not talk about that right now. Let's get into our episode.
Yeah. But we're in South Africa now.
Yes.
How's it is one of these South African phrases. It's a like, hello, how's it going, literally. And we started our podcast here in Johannesburg last year in September.
Yes. And now we're back at the halweigh point. We
It's
took
so
our tiny break
exciting.
and we're launching into the second half.
I know. It's really cool. I think, we're having such a great time here. And anyway, we just have so much to talk about.
Yes.
But we'll sprinkle that in.
Yes, we like the perfect seasoning.
Exactly. The Cape Malay seasoning or something. There's some kind of a seasoning that's special to this area.
We'll find out.
I'll know by next week.
Or write in and let us know.
If you're listening and you know, send us a message right now.
We will have more to talk about beautiful Cape Town next
my gosh.
week.
Yes.
Because this week we've been at Comic-Con Africa, Comic-Con Cape Town.
Yes.
And it has been extraordinary. It's a 5-day show. Tomorrow is day 5.
Yeah.
And
It's so crazy.
We've been in the trenches and it has been extraordinary. So we can only talk about that right now. But first, let's talk about the episode.
Let's get into this. This episode is a little different from our typical Pokemon episodes in the fact that it's a little bit more Rocky Karate Kid style. I feel like it's a lot more training leading up to these battles where it's not your typical Pokemon battle. It's all happening in the ring. It's very boxing forward. So
that's true.
We start with our group, Ash, Misty, Brock. They're walking along and they come across what they think is a wild Hitmonchan, which is a Pokemon, wears boxing gloves and like a little Roman toga
Roman
outfit.
skirt, like
Yeah,
a
little skirt.
centurion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or a tennis skirt. And
Right.
to bring it into modern day life.
That's
So
true.
Ash tries to capture what he thinks is this wild Pokemon. And so in order to do that, he tries to train Pikachu in some boxing techniques.
The basics.
Right. Which
You've got to
somehow
learn the
he
basics.
knows. And I just think it's so funny because he just comes out of the blue with these boxing things.
Yes.
I just can't believe that.
He knows all the moves.
Right. How
And
does he know that?
I don't know, but I do remember recording this, and it was a bit of improv in there.
Oh, really?
And you can see how his arm is going for uppercut and all of that. Yeah, I do remember that. I think perhaps I called upon my stage combat training for this.
Yeah, so this is a surprise because how does he know it and how do you know it?
That's it.
I think it's impressive that you are able to kind of whip that out from from memory. Because when I'm asked
Yes.
to do stuff kind of off the top of my head, especially recording wise, I just freeze, I find.
Well, we trained with quarterstaff, sword, punching, all of that. And then when I was in the Batman stunt show, we did a bit of that too. So every skill that you ever learn, you are called upon to use again at some point.
That is true. And that's another reason why keeping a journal is so important because writing it down helps to
remember.
keep it in your memory.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
true. My favorite move here is Pikachu launches
yeah.
into Rocket Punch against Hitmonchan after it has been kind of pulling all of its moves. And Hitmonchan, who is so tall, extends an arm to the forehead of Pikachu to simply hold it back.
Yeah, it's hilarious and it's classic, just humor. But yeah, Pikachu delivers this rocket punch, which
Flying through the air
is electric.
with its little boxing gloves on.
I know. Where does it even get the gloves?
Where do they get them? I don't know.
Is Ash just carrying them around in his suitcase?
Tiny
in his backpack?
baby boxing gloves.
Yeah, maybe they are inflatable.
Maybe they were Ash's baby boxing gloves.
Oh.
And his mother put those in with his underwear.
We have to
I don't
rewatch.
know.
Go back to the first episode when she's listing all the things that she packed for him.
That's right.
And see if she includes the boxing gloves.
Well, okay, so Pikachu launches into the punch, basically gives a tiny little dent to
It seems like it's going to be pretty effective,
Yes.
but it ends up not being effective at all, actually.
That's right. And then we see Rebecca comes out from behind a tree at that point, doesn't she?
No, I think it's Anthony. No, Anthony comes first. So Anthony
yes.
is the
Yes.
trainer.
Right.
And he comes and he runs up and he goes, Hitmonchan, don't fighting smart hurts less than fighting stupid or something. And so he comes in and it turns out that he is Hitmonchan's trainer.
Right.
And I do think that is an important lesson because, fighting smart, you need to be thinking, you need your wits about you when you are in a battle or in a fight.
In everything that you do, even debate club, or in just an argument or a discussion with your friends, you need to be thinking smart. When you act just from the head, as they say, you run foolhardy into something, you often lose and get bruised in more ways than one. So
Yeah.
I do think, being smart helps.
And in terms of, actual fighting, I know when you were kind of teaching me how to throw a punch and all that kind of stuff, you taught me the proper way to do it so that when you punch, you're not actually hurting your own wrist more than you're hurting your opponent.
That's right. I forgot all
and,
about that.
you're
how to
trying
keep your wrist straight.
Right. And so you have to learn, even with stage combat, like how you fall properly and whatever. So I think also in this sense of fighting smart, you need to know kind of the basics of how to do it and how to do it correctly so that you actually don't end up getting more injured than your opponent.
That's right.
And so anyway, Hitmonchan totally pummels poor Pikachu.
Yes.
And then Rebecca pops out And she's this girl who's been hiding behind this tree the whole time. And finds out that Rebecca is Anthony's daughter. And she's come because she says, come home, Dad. And he goes, I won't until I win the P1 Grand Prix. And then he leaves. And we find out that, he hasn't been home for who knows how long.
The Pokemon #1 Grand Prix.
Right.
It's a gigantic battle in the ring. Super battle style. So he's out just till he wins. And then they go running off.
Yeah.
Leaving Rebecca.
He has a very thick New York Italian accent, and she doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so who knows which town he's from, but we haven't found it yet.
He probably got it in the ring.
He got it in the ring,
because
yes, exactly.
They're boxing.
Exactly. Hitmonchan.
Hitmonlee.
Hitmonlee.
Yeah.
Please, Rebecca. It's me, Anthony.
Maddie
Rebecca,
Blaustein, I'm sure,
home.
played that amazing.
Yes.
Simply amazing.
So he hasn't come home, and Brock, of course, who's infatuated with Rebecca, immediately says, we will help you. We will defeat Anthony's Hitmonchan. So he comes to his senses and comes home to you guys. So Brock and Ash decide to enter the tournament with their Pokemon so they can kind of help her beat him.
Right. So they set off for the Fighting Spirit Gym.
Yes.
Which is an incredibly, I would say, lo-fi gym with just weights, a weight bench.
They don't need anything because they just work out all day.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just lifting. I think Anthony must work out with Hitmonchan because he is really jacked.
Yeah. He's a big trainer.
He's a big guy.
But it just goes to show you that you don't need a lot to be able to be strong and work out. You don't even have to invest in a lot of weights. I mean, you could even use water bottles, really, and lift something. But that's what doing those squats and push-ups and sit-ups, it really helps.
We need the Pokemon Handbook, and we need Anthony's Guide to Fitness.
It's like Jack LaLanne.
Exactly. That is what we need. That's the next spinoff, is going to be an Anthony/Hitmonchan training guidebook.
That's true. Well, okay, we'll work on it.
Okay, we'll do it. Anyway, so we get to the gym and we find out a little bit more about the Grand Prix.
We find out that it's an incredible match-up, and these Pokemon have to be so well trained for it. And we immediately, before we get into the fighting, we see Team Rocket.
Right. So Brock and Ash decide, okay, we're going to enter. And Ash decides to use his Primeape, which is a risky decision because we all know what Primeape is capable of. And Brock decides to use Geodude. So they're going to enter. Then we cut to Team Rocket looking at the prize, which is this big, bedazzled, bejeweled belt. And they are kind of talking about what they would do if they won. And Brock and Meowth, oh no, not Brock, oops, Freudian slip.
Oh gosh, yes.
James and Meowth are saying they would sell the belt and turn it into food, and they would go to an all-you-can-eat buffet.
And they're eating, which is my favorite part.
Things.
Yes.
And then Jessie, I almost said Misty. Jessie says, I would sell it and then use the money and buy all of these beauty products, make myself even more beautiful. And have a big dinner party.
The dinner party is one of my favorite things that she dreams of inviting people over.
Yes, and it's like a beach dinner party because they're all in their bathing suits.
Mm-hmm.
She's sitting in there being served by bikini-clad men. Anyway, amazing. Sounds so fun. Maybe her house has a pool. Maybe that's why.
Does she have a house?
Maybe in her dream.
That's it. The Jessie Dream House.
Exactly. So they decide to enter, but they don't have any fighting Pokemon. And so they see this man walking down the street with his Hitmonlee.
Yes.
And they do something pretty dastardly. This is kind of the most dastardly they've been. They kidnap him. Well, yeah.
Yes, they do.
They kidnap him.
Steal his coat.
Yeah, they lock him up in a bathroom, tie him to a toilet, I think, and then they take his coat.
I think he's in a closet, like a dressing room or something.
I thought it was a bathroom stall.
I'm thinking it's a gym. Well, I don't know. It
know.
wasn't clear. He was sitting on something.
It looked like a bathroom stall to
oh
me.
my gosh.
Which is even worse. But they tie him up to something in a walled small enclosure.
Mhm.
They take his coat, and he's incredibly tall because Jesse has to get on James's shoulders. And they put his hat on, and they put his trench coat on, and they basically steal his Hitmonlee and enter the competition as him.
As his identity as Giles.
Giles.
And my favorite thing is she leaves him there and says, please remain seated. But
Right.
he's tied up.
I know,
Anyway,
it
it's
has
horrible.
nothing to do with anything. It's so funny. And anyway, that is kind of the meanest they've actually been.
I think so. Then we launch into the fighting.
We launch into the fighting. We've got Hitmonlee, the kicking fiend. And I love it. Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan. Isn't it, their names are based off of, what, Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee?
That's right. And I found that out. We all probably could have guessed it, but I found that out at the first movie because I had gone to the premiere and I got to meet the people who did the Pokemon names.
That's
And
so
they
cool.
actually told me that.
Wow.
It's really, really cool. Like tiny things like that you find out along the way.
Were the names in English or the names in Japanese?
No, these were the people who named the Pokemon in English.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And I never saw them again.
Wow.
We didn't see that many people anyway.
They were ghosts.
They could have been.
It was like you saw them like well, not really Christmas past and present, but something similar to that.
Exactly. They were just
An apparition.
the remnants of their energy there on Earth. But anyway, they did a great job naming them.
Yeah, totally.
So we've
Whoever
got,
you are, whatever
you.
you are. Thank you for
Yes,
your service.
wherever, yeah.
Yes. So the fighting begins, and it's taking place in this ring, like a boxing ring.
Mhm.
So it's very,
Rocky-ish.
Rocky-like. And it starts off with Machop and Primeape.
Mm-hmm.
And Machop is small, but mighty. And it's doing this seismic toss of Primeape, and Primeape's just getting, pummeled. And Primeape gets thrown out of the ring.
Right. With the seismic toss.
Yes.
Giant seismic toss.
And Ash goes running after Primeape and basically catches it. Well,
In one of those amazing
Yeah.
extended through the air, reaching out, and Primeape doesn't land on the floor, it lands on Ash.
Yep. And Ash basically, sacrifices himself to save Primeape. And Primeape totally changes in that moment. Its eyes get teary and it suddenly, trusts Ash.
Perhaps it never had anyone to trust or who would have done something so grand.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things where it finally sees Ash in a different way.
Yes.
And it's that kind of sacrifice that really wins it over. And after that, it works with Ash and it listens to him and
Now they're ready to train together.
Yeah,
And win.
exactly. Exactly. Which is amazing. And I think it's a greater lesson for all of us that, sometimes people just take longer to trust and they
Yeah.
take longer to warm up to you. And so it's not necessarily, the more you push, sometimes that people will pull away. But you just have to be there, and you have to just be around and touch base and be there for people.
You
And
support
slowly
one.
but surely they will, warm up to you.
Well, you support one another because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Not because you expect results.
Exactly.
But you hope to get some results. And in this case, Ash and Primeape both did.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Ash wants what's best for his Pokemon and not necessarily for himself. He's not focused on winning or losing in that moment. He's just focused on Primeape's well-being. And that, I think, just cuts through that hard exterior shell of Primeape.
Mm-hmm.
And we get
Exactly.
to that. So after that, Primeape bounces back and beats Machop. And then we get Brock. Brock is up, and it's Geodude versus Hitmonlee, the kicking fiend.
Mm-hmm.
And
because they keep saying, kick, 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 kick.
yeah, kick, 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 kick. James goes, kick, 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 kick. So this is kind of a different story
Mm-hmm.
in this ring.
Because Brock essentially throws his Geodude in, and Geodude it gets kicked back, hits
Yeah.
Brock in the head, and he gets a giant goose egg bump, very cartoony, on his head, and he kind of can't function after that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because he gets knocked out a little bit or like he's concussed or what.
I don't know.
But he
falters.
Yeah, so Geodude is getting kicked by Hitmonlee. And Brock, Ash is like, Brock, you got to do something. You got to get Geodude out. And I think I took it as Brock being a little conflicted about what to do because he wants to help Rebecca. He wants to, be the one to save her, I would imagine. But, his Geodude is in trouble. And so he kind of is going, while Geodude's getting kicked. And it's actually our friend Anthony who comes in and says, a real man knows when to throw in the towel, which I think this applies to everybody. I don't think it's a real man.
That's a real person.
A real person.
A real human, maybe.
But he goes, you can lose today and win tomorrow. And it's an important lesson of, you've got to know when to stop.
When to hold them, when to fold them.
When to walk away, when to run.
That's it.
Exactly.
There's a lesson in any way you say it. The lesson is it's not always about winning. It's about taking care.
Totally.
And in this case, Brock decides to throw in the towel.
He throws in a literal towel and they forfeit. And, in that moment, Brock is... He's caring about his Pokemon. That's what he's supposed to be doing. And so he kind of wins that.
And he very gently says, don't worry, we can win again. It's not your fault. Don't feel bad.
Right. And I never really thought of Geodude as a fighting Pokemon like that.
But it has those giant, bulky arms and big, it's always in a fist.
Right. It can't put its arms down. And those guys who when they get their workout so much and their arms get so big that they can't put them down to their side? Geodude's like that, but opposite.
I love that he's like, Geo, dude.
I know.
That was not an impression. I'm not trying to impersonate them.
No, you're honoring.
But I'm honoring them.
Yes.
Okay,
so then we get to Hitmonchan versus Hitmonlee, which is the fight we've been waiting for. And it's kind of crazy because Hitmonchan is really good at dodging the kicks of Lee, and it's everyone is tense. And this is the fight. This is the battle that will determine which one will go to the final round to battle Ash.
Between
actually.
Essentially Team Rocket and Anthony. Or no, Giles. Team Rocket, a.k.a. Giles.
Giles versus Anthony. And Team Rocket decide that they have to win this battle by nefarious acts.
Which is, par for the course.
Totally.
So Meowth gets this giant... a bottle of glue.
Yes. He goes in and he squirts some super glue into the floor and basically plants or glues Hitmonchan's foot to the ground. And so Hitmonchan can't dodge the kicks and it's getting pummeled. And this is a similar thing with Brock where, Anthony has to make the decision to stop the fight because his Pokemon is getting hurt and he kind of won't do it because he's had this whole thing built up in his head for so long and wanting to win and all this kind of stuff that he has trouble doing it. And it's actually Rebecca who comes in and steps in front of Hitmonchan and says, you can't hurt my dad's Pokemon. And it's an eye-opening experience for Anthony.
And so Anthony decides to throw in the towel.
Yeah, he goes, oh, Rebecca. And so he kind of goes in, he protects Rebecca.
I just like you doing that.
I love it too. I have to do more. This is my favorite part. And he's like, Rebecca, are you Hoyt? Are you Hoyt? Because he gets kicked. And are you Hoyt? And she goes, no, I'm not. And then later he goes, oh, that's my Goyle. That's my Goyle. It's so funny. Like, where are you from,
and
Anthony?
Yet really heartfelt. And so because he finally is realizing he has some responsibility for his daughter.
Yeah.
And that maybe him being at the gym all the time isn't the best thing for their relationship.
Right. And maybe too, like, seeing that she cares. Maybe he just didn't think that they cared like he did.
I don't know.
But she has dedication just like him. It's just she shows it in a different way. She just wants him to come home and, sleep in his own bed and maybe eat some dinner with them. So.
Exactly.
Who knows? And I'm sure she would look great in a little Roman toga too. So
maybe
she
that's
could probably
what they all
help
wear.
train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a big moment for them. And then we get to the final, and it's Ash and Primeape versus Team Rocket, a.k.a. Giles, and Hitmonlee.
Mm-hmm.
And it's big. It's a big fight. Things are happening.
They start fighting, and Meowth decides to pull a trick.
They have one last trick up their very long
Sleeves,
trench-coated
yes.
sleeve.
So Meowth crawls under the boxing ring
Back under.
and sets up this whole shock thing.
Yeah.
And the plan is for Hitmonlee to jump up, they push the button, and Primeape will get electrocuted.
Right. And so Pikachu kind of sees what's going on and goes underneath and or sees something that's happening and notifies Ash. And Ash is too busy focusing on his game to, listen to Pikachu. So Pikachu takes matters into its own hands and goes underneath the ring and, does something.
I think disconnects the whole box.
I think so, but we just don't see it. So we can imagine, but Pikachu's under there and then and then Hitmonlee jumps up and nothing happens to Primeape. And then Primeape jumps up and it's this huge thing. And Primeape basically grabs Hitmonlee midair and smacks it to the floor. And it's this giant thing and Primeape wins the battle. It gets the belt. It's very victorious. It's a huge thing.
Ash is like, it's prime time for Primeape.
Yeah.
It was a lovely play on words.
Yes, amazing. It's so exciting.
And
everybody's happy. And Team Rocket is confused because what happened to their big plan?
And they don't know.
But Pikachu, being so helpful, comes and gives the electric thing
This box
back to Meowth.
Yeah,
and
and
Meowth
who-
is like, oh, thanks so much.
Who is almost like, what could this be? And
Yeah.
pushes the button.
Oh my gosh, the button gets pressed and they get electrocuted out there. It's so crazy. I wonder, because of that, what happens to Hitmonlee and Giles? Because
they are-
we didn't talk about Giles only was wearing the trench coat.
Right,
Giles didn't
was
have any clothes
naked
on under there.
except for his underwear under the trench coat. So we never see Giles get untied up.
Right, because they get blasted off. I'm sure the trench coat went with them.
Kind of, they were revealed
I guess.
from it. So we finally find out, oh my gosh, it's Team Rocket.
Right.
They get shocked. They're out of there. And the next thing we see is Ash, Misty, and Brock with Pikachu out on the road. And Primeape is standing with Anthony and Rebecca.
Yeah. And Anthony goes, you got a great fighter. You've got a great fighter there with you. Let me train Primeape.
Leave Primeape with me and I'll make him a contender.
Make him
He could be a contender.
That's him as an old man.
That's the Godfather.
I know, but you know what I mean. We're
So-
in the world. But he says I can make him a P1 champion or something. And so Ash lets Primeape stay there.
I find this to be so sad because
Yeah.
Primeape's little eyes are all glassy and teary, and
I
it's
know.
waving goodbye to Ash as they just turn and walk away. And
Yeah.
this is a little bit on par with, when we all talk about Butterfree
Yeah.
being, let go on its
It's
own.
emotional, but this is emotional.
There
This
is
big.
we haven't had enough time with Primeape to
Yeah,
be able to go
justice
through
for
a whole
Primeape.
reverie of the past.
Seriously, justice for Primeape. I mean, Primeape has been through a lot and obviously has a tortured past. And I just think that, he deserves more. But I do think hopefully with Anthony, we can get that fighting spirit and really channel that to good use. I'm just surprised that Ash didn't keep Primeape because I think if he had it, he would win a lot more battles. Because Primeape is pretty, unstoppable.
So it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe it's those dogs that need to be kind of constantly trained or, border collies need to run around all the time. Maybe Primeape needs to be in a space where it can be fighting and punching all the time because otherwise it will kind of go crazy and, start being destructive.
Well, that's what they say. There's certain dogs
Yeah.
that, if you don't really run them and exercise them every day. So Primeape is
That might
possibly
be
the
it.
same. And also they don't have time to do that kind of specific training.
Yeah.
You're just kind of training everybody, right?
Ash
at the
only
same time.
knows the basics. So there's only so much he can do with those baby boxing gloves of his.
That must have been it.
So anyway, something happens and he leaves Primeape, which is sad, but probably for the best. But they go off into the distance and that's kind of where we leave them.
It is very sad. I think. I've enjoyed our time with Primeape.
Me too.
And apparently, there are actual monkeys in the wild who do steal things and then barter to give them back. We just found out.
Yes.
And so we're not seeing that much of this happening with Primeape, as we can guess that's the kind of animal it was actually based on.
Totally, because it stole Ash's hat, and then what did it actually want?
Yeah, I don't know. We don't know.
Maybe
Just
companionship,
to be loved.
love.
Yes.
And it found that.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, that I guess Ash has decided that it will all be better for Primeape to kind of grow up in a better environment than he can offer.
Yeah.
So, again, we all have to know when to let go.
Right.
And when to hold on. I just thought this was a really interesting episode for that. I mean, we learned about training and really about working out. I actually read this article about super agers in the New York Times, and it was talking about how the interesting thing about people whose memories were really sharp once they got over 80, like in the 80 to 110-year-olds. And those people exercised. They had healthy diets. I mean, there was nothing like eat 3 tomatoes a day and that's the key.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they found that these people had in common was their social relationships, that they had a strong social gathering, social circles. And that's something that's really important for all of us. Join a book club or a soccer team or, a Pokemon Go club maybe.
Yes.
That things like this.
Podcast listening group.
Yeah, out together.
Yes. Oh, yeah,
Not just in your car.
Oh, no, with others.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that you are social. Perhaps if you're older, you hang out with younger people and vice versa. And it helps you keep track of things and keeps you curious.
Totally.
It keeps you going. I think that's our super secret. In the same article, they said that for younger people also, that physical fitness played a very big part in having better mental health.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And so I think that also goes hand in hand with when you're older, all of it kind of circles around. So it's a good reason to just get outside, maybe lift those water bottles or do some push-ups against the wall even.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to people.
Channel your own Hitmonchan.
Yeah, that's right.
I do think that that's a thing I've found. I've heard stories of people saying that having that connection or meeting up with friends in person or talking to people in person, it helps you and keeps your memory, keeps you remembering things and trying to, in a different way than you would just by yourself.
Yes, exactly.
And so, I definitely have heard that people find that keeps their mind sharp. So that makes sense.
I can't remember, but maybe. No. Anyway, I think this is a great time for the Poke Wrap Up,
where we hear from you, the Pokemon community.
We asked you to send in your favorite Pokemon memories, stories, and inspirations.
And here is one of this week's.
Kimberly has written to us from Houston, Texas. She writes, I actually just met you at Collecticon. I've been a fan nearly my entire life. My parents bought me Pokemon Yellow for my Game Boy Color when I was 5, and I have played every single game that's been released since then. Now that I'm a parent, I've introduced my love of Pokemon to my son. We began by watching the Indigo League and a few of the earlier movies. When I was his age, I would come home from school and watch Pokemon every day. There's something so special about being able to give that same experience to my son. It feels like everything is coming full circle. Thank you, Kimberly. I can't agree with you more. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And we want to hear from all of you.
Email us a short recording or write to us at trainersguidepod@gmail.com.
And try to keep it short if you can, maybe 30 seconds or so we don't have to edit.
Oh, and please include your first name and where you're from.
Well, that about wraps up today's episode of The Trainer's Guide. And, as they say, to be continued. We hope that you continue to join us on this journey that is the Trainer's Guide.
As you know, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Wherever you're listening now.
And if you subscribe, comment, and rate the podcast, it helps others find the show and keeps us on the air.
Thank you so much in advance for your generosity and all of your amazing support.
Trainer's Guide is a production of Boom Integrated.
We are co-executive producing this along with
The amazing Adrian Glover
and the incomparable Robin Lai. I'm your host, Veronica Taylor.
And I'm your host, Rena Taylor.
And this has been The Trainer's Guide. We'll see you out there on the road.